All right, well, why don't we go ahead and kick it off? I'll start with this an intro, and then I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Lassiter.
All right.
So just want to welcome everyone and thank everyone for joining us to our virtual family resource series. We hope this finds you and your loved ones well. We want to thank you for taking time to join us today. These events are brought to you by faculty and staff that are typically held during our family weekend. As you know, the college was unable to host Family Weekend this year, but we wanted to ensure that families had the opportunity to obtain the information that they would have normally gotten during the Family Weekend programs. Um, we also have a web page that we've started to generate some information on. It's roanoke.edu/parents. So there is a resource page on within that web page dedicated for more resources for you, which includes information about some of these events that we've posted today. I want to again thank our colleagues and students who have collaborated with us to bring these topics to you virtually. Before we begin the discussion, I want to cover just a few logistical points as we go through. As you're watching on YouTube, there is a chat feature. So if you have any questions along the way, please utilize that chat feature, and I will present the questions to our panelists at the end here for them to answer. So today's session is being recorded, and we are actively uploading our previous sessions onto our YouTube page. So we're hoping that those will be all available to view on Friday, tomorrow. So today's topic is undergraduate research, and that's brought to you by Dr. Chris Lassiter, who is our Director of Undergraduate Research. A little bit more about Chris. He received his undergraduate degree in biology from Furman University. He graduated from Duke with a PhD in genetics in 2005. That same year, Chris arrived at Roanoke College. He teaches embryology, cell biology, and immunology. Chris also teaches a travel course on national parks, taking students to the desert Southwest. He is the advisor for the Biology Club and runs an active research lab with students here at the college. He received the Dean's Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2010 and the Dean's Award for Excellence in Service in 2018. He is currently the director of our undergraduate research here at the college. We also have the pleasure of being joined by 3 students as well. Lauren Powell is a senior in psychology working with Dr. Chris Buchholz. Lauren, if you just want to wave. Tess Weidenkopf is a junior in biochemistry and theater working with Dr. Steve Hughes. Steph Zemba is a senior in sociology working with Dr. Christy Hoffman and Mita Morhoda. So at this point, Dr. Lassiter, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to talking with the family and friends that are watching today. And I'm going to try to keep my remarks relatively brief because I think the students talk even better than I do about this. All right, it's their experiences that we're working toward here at the college, trying to support them on their journey. So I will have my contact info at the end. So if you aren't able to get in a question during the live chat and want to email me, you can. And the students, I believe, are going to provide theirs as well. So with that, let's get started. First, I want to just talk about where undergraduate research sits in the spectrum of experiential learning here at the college. We've got the academic coursework, which is absolutely critical, but it's also important to have some experiences that you can internalize and take on to that next level, whether it's graduate school, professional school, or career. So we want to engage students in real world situations with experiential learning. And at Roanoke College, that fits into 5 main areas. Research is just one of those areas. It also includes artistic and creative works, internships, study away, or study abroad. That could be abroad internationally or study away here within the United States, like a Washington semester. And service learning, learning with a service component in the courses. So research is just one piece of this, but that's what we're going to focus on today. What do we hope to achieve with research and experiential learning in general? Well, if you look at the college's overall mission statement, there it is, to prepare students for responsible lives of learning, service, and leadership by promoting intellectual, ethical, spiritual, and personal growth. And that's why an education at Roanoke is more than just the classroom, right? It's what happens outside the classroom, the conversations late at night in a residence hall, or in a research lab, or at an internship. And producing these educated, responsible citizens that engage with their communities is part of what we want to do. And research can be a piece of that puzzle. So diving more into depth there, what is research? When I ask this question to high school seniors, for example, I'll get, it's the scientist in the lab coat with the goggles. Like, that is research. But that's not all research is. The typical first thought of a lot of people is that research is science. But at Roanoke College and at other institutions as well, research embodies all the disciplines. It is more than just science. And you're going to see that today with some of our student presenters. It's all the disciplines on campus. So we have active research students in the humanities, like history and English, fine arts. We have active research in the social sciences, like psychology, sociology, business and economics, and in the sciences as well, with biology, chemistry, math, computer science, physics. So all of those areas are active on campus. Faculty are doing research in those areas, and students are doing research in those areas. So after I talk with students a bit about what research is, and that, yes, no matter your major, you can do research. Why should they do research? Right? They've got all these other things going on in their lives. They've got classes. They've got all sorts of extracurriculars. Why do research? And I think it's just basic human curiosity. When you're doing research, you are doing the scholarly pursuit of knowledge and pushing up against the boundaries, the edge of what is known. You're expanding the human condition, whether that's in history, whether that's in English, whether that's in biology, whether that's in sociology. You are expanding what is known about the natural world or what it means to be human. And I'm a firm believer that a liberal arts education, like we have at Roanoke College, works best when you're not just educating the head. You're educating your head, your hands, and your heart. Your head with that intellectual knowledge, your heart because you get passionate about the project and you care, and your hands, you're getting skills in that discipline. Again, whether it's diving through archives and history or at a lab bench in chemistry. Now, that's the very kind of high-minded goals. There are more practical goals, reasons to do research. You are gaining skills for professional graduate programs and careers. These are skills that you can list on your resume that could help you get that next position. And as part of doing research, you can make presentations at conferences. You can present on campus at our showcases, which are normally at Family Weekend and Alumni Weekend, or you can go off campus and present at local, regional, national, or even international conferences. And a few students each year become authors on publications. And I often joke with the students, it's not quite a Willy Wonka golden ticket to graduate school, but having a publication really helps. It showcases what you can do and that you are now a published scholarly author. And you build a really strong relationship with whoever your faculty research mentor is. And that usually leads to a letter of recommendation, whether it's a job, professional school, graduate school. And they get to know you really well, so they can often write a fantastic letter. What makes Roanoke College different, distinctive from other schools that are carrying out undergraduate research? I think number one, being that we're a small liberal arts college, is access to the faculty. We don't have graduate students that are working on the research, the experiments. We have undergraduates. They are working with $250,000 pieces of equipment their freshman year because we don't have graduate students. So the access to the faculty, the access to the equipment, where the faculty in their professional lives are engaging the students in professional lives. We also have a program that's distinctive called the Summer Academy. For those of you that have students in high school, students can register and come do summer research through the Summer Academy program and get academic course credit as a high school student. So I have had Summer Academy high school students work in my research lab, and then they end up coming to Roanoke College because they enjoyed that experience. We have a program for incoming students. So the Summer Academy is for students that are currently in high school. Research fellows are for students who are in their senior year of high school and apply to be a research fellow at the same time they're applying to come to the college. This program allows students to start their research from the day they set foot on campus. I joke about that because usually you want to move and settle in and find out where your classes are. So maybe week 1 or week 2, not the first day. But you're matched with a research mentor from the beginning. And we have students from that program that are going to be talking with us today. We have a program for students who are already here and want to get paid for doing research. That's the Work Study Research Assistant Program. Students get paid $8 an hour to work with a faculty member. Again, this is across disciplines. So we have students that are in the humanities, we have students in the sciences and in the social sciences that are getting paid to do research with a faculty member. They can also get course credit. So most students can either do the pay or the course credit. And then we have our honors program. The honors program has distinction projects for every student that's in the honors program where they propose and carry out a multi-semester project. I don't oversee that area in particular because I'm not in charge of the honors program, but I work closely with them because they are all doing research here on campus. So those are some of the programs that we have that makes RC distinctive. And I thought I'd put a couple of quotes up. This is from student Ben Walker, who was published twice while he was an undergraduate here. So he had 2 scientific articles that he was an author on and received national recognition. He won a honorable mention award in a national poster contest at our developmental biology conference. So he was a student in my research lab. And Sarah Farthing, who's in the picture here, has this quote, "They gave me a key to the room." Here she's using one of a set of microscopes that we have in the biology department. The pair of those microscopes cost $250,000, and she got a key to the room, her freshman year. And that's the sort of access to equipment that you have at a small liberal arts college. When students are doing research here, they can do it during the school year or semester-based research, or they could do it during the summer. So I wanted to talk just briefly about that. If your student is interested in doing research during the semester, there's those 2 options: course credit, where they do an independent study course with the professor, or pay. That's the Work Study Research Assistant Program. And I'll often tell students, every professor can have a work study research assistant, but some of them don't. And so I'll tell a student, if you really want to work with that professor, you could go and ask them to create the position, which you can then apply for. So if you've got a student interested in doing the work study research assistant with a particular professor, you can ask the professor, create a position. Our students also get financial support to help with their research. There's a program here on campus called the Pathways program that a student and faculty member together apply for and can get $500 to support their research project. And that definition is loose. It's support the research project. What do you mean? It could be reagents for a chemistry lab. It could be travel to an archive under normal situations, travel to an archive that you need in history, for example. It could be gift certificates to help with incentives on a survey if you're in psychology or sociology. So it could be used for whatever you need for the project. The Dean's Travel Fund, which I oversee, provides up to $500 to each student that's going to present at a conference. Now, right now, those conferences are virtual, but when travel resumes, then it would provide for conference travel. While the conferences are virtual, that will provide for registration fees for the conference. And I even had one lab ask me, can our students get some reimbursement to DoorDash every evening a meal and get together on Zoom and talk about the talks that they went to that day virtually? Because that's what we would often do at a conference, is if we took a group of students, we'd have dinner together and kind of debrief in the evening. And so they asked if they could do that with DoorDash individually over Zoom. I said, yes, that's absolutely reasonable. Because I mean, that's what we want to do, is encourage that development, that professional development that you would get at a conference. Honor students as well, they get their own project funding. A lot of students do research during the semester. It's usually around 300 are doing research during the academic year. About 50 students do research each summer here at the college. And the two ways to do that, two main ways, we have a summer scholar program, and students that apply and get accepted as a summer scholar get $3,000 stipend for the summer. They get free housing for the summer, and they get a course credit. It's a competitive program. We usually have around 20 to 30 applications each summer for 10 spots for the summer scholars. But that's still pretty good odds, a 1 in 3 shot. We also have social opportunities during the summer. So we'll go to movies, we'll go to putt-putt, we'll go on hikes, and there are weekly educational workshops on career development during the summer. That's just 10 of the students. About 40 of the students that are on campus do research through the various departments that have funding to support summer students. They get pay as well, typically the same $3,000, and they get the free summer housing. And they get to participate in all the social opportunities and educational workshops. So doing research on campus during the summer is a time when you can dive into a project and not worry about all the other courses that you're taking, other distractions, and you can kind of commit full time to moving that research project forward. I should mention only some departments have that departmental summer research funds. It depends on the endowments for those particular departments. Each year, about 5 to 10 students do research off campus through programs like Research Experience for Undergraduates, which is a National Science Foundation run program. Those programs pay students to relocate to a major college, university, or research station for the summer, and then pay the student while they're there that summer. They're very competitive as well, but we usually have between 5 and 10 students each summer doing that. Often those students have done a summer of research here before they do a summer of research somewhere else, but not always. Sometimes their first summer experience is through the off-campus program. What are the outcomes of all of this research? We have had a huge increase in the number of scholarships and fellowships over the last decade. because of an amazing person running that office, as well as the students doing more and more research here on campus. So we get Rhodes finalists, Fulbrights, Goldwaters, major scholarships and fellowships. Most of those students have done research. And of course, they're going off to graduate, medical schools, they're getting on faculty publications. The two students I'm showing here, Seth on the top there, he is currently getting an MD PhD, a double doctorate at the University of Alabama. And he did undergraduate research while he was here at the college. And that launched him into that career path to get the double doctorate. And Naomi, there on the bottom right, recently got an authorship on a paper out of the chemistry department. So we've got students that are doing these things almost every academic year. So there's a couple of recent publications, one out of chemistry, one out of biology. I'm in the sciences, so those kind of rose to the top of my mind. Of course, it's happening in other disciplines as well. And I can't pronounce half the words in the chemistry one. A lot of students are also going to conferences. We have usually about 100 students every year presenting at conferences. Some of those are national and international. And we have students that will win awards as well at those conferences. So that's a place where you can present your research, get those presentation skills, and network. You get to network with others in the field. It's a fantastic opportunity. Just a couple of recent events as I wrap up my portion. In 2019 and 2020, we had students present at Posters on the Hill, which is where students present undergraduate research to Congress. The one in 2019 was in person, the one in 2020 was virtual. Only 60 students from across the country get selected to go to this program, and most of those are from major research universities. The fact that Roanoke College, a small college, had 2 students in a row, I looked back at least the past 5-6 years, I saw no other college had that achievement. So I think that speaks highly to the quality of research going on here at the college. And both of the projects that were selected, Anna Ford is in history and Hannah Guthrie is in health and human performance. So both of those were outside the sciences. We had one in the humanities and one in the social sciences. I already mentioned some of these other numbers. Usually about 50 students are doing summer research, over 75 presenting at conferences last academic year. Usually it's around 100, but last year, of course, a lot of conferences were canceled. And then the paid positions, we have over 70 students that are working in paid positions with faculty. That's not to mention all the independent study course credit. So there are a lot of opportunities for your students, whether they are currently here or maybe they're thinking about coming here. If you have questions, we do have roanoke.edu/research, goes to a lot of information about research here on campus. But if you can't find it there on the website, just shoot me an email. research@roanoke.edu comes to me. So I check that account usually once or twice a day. We also have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where we will showcase some of the student research that's going on. So I know we've got students participating in virtual conferences over the next couple of months. After they present, we hope to write up some blog entries about them. So that's my portion, which I wanted to get through so you could hear it from the students themselves about the projects that they've been doing. They've already been introduced. So we've got Tess. Tess works with Dr. Hughes in chemistry. We've got Lauren with Dr. Buckholtz in psychology, and Steph with Drs. Merotra and Hoffman in sociology. And we'll do it in that order. So we'll have Tess, then Lauren, then Steph present to us. And I'm looking forward to hearing about it. I know a good bit about what they're doing, but hearing it from them is always a treat. So With that, I'll hand it over to Tess.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Therese Weidenkopf. I go by Tess. I am a junior here at Roanoke College, and I'm a double major in biochemistry and theater on a pre-med track. And my research project that I do with Dr. Stephen Hughes is CIS nanocrystal toxicology. So a little bit of background information. I work with quantum dots, which are also called nanocrystals. And I wanted to include this photo of Iron Man from the End Games because that one scene where he pulls on his sweatshirt and his entire suit just comes out of nowhere, he actually is working with nanomaterials and nanocrystals like I am. Mine's a little bit different though, I'm not making any Iron Man suits. So anyway, back to what quantum dots and nanocrystals are. So they are really, really tiny structures that are composed of a core, a shell, and a stabilizing ligand. The core is the main material. That's usually a hard metal or some form of metal. And then you have the shell, which is what's going to stabilize the fluorescence of the nanocrystal. Most nanocrystals do fluoresce. And then your stabilizing ligand is your ligand that makes your nanocrystal soluble in either an organic solvent or an aqueous solvent. So a little bit more background information. The reason why quantum dots and nanocrystals are so important in our scientific research now is that they have distinctive optical properties. And their optical properties are characterized by their band gap energy. And a band gap energy is the amount of energy needed to excite an electron from its HOMO to its LUMO. Now, HOMO is its highest occupied molecular orbital. So when you're taking Gen Chem and you learn all about valence electrons, that's what we're talking about. So once that's excited and it's got enough energy, it's going to jump to the LUMO, as you see in the diagram on the bottom left kind of center, right there. Yes, thank you. It's going to jump to the LUMO state when it has enough energy. And then when it starts losing energy, it's going to fall back down to its highest occupied molecular orbital, the HOMO. And that is what's going to emit light. And then your nanocrystal will fluoresce. Now, the nanocrystals I work with is copper indium sulfide. And as you can see on the top figure, that is around the absorbance of 2, and it's going to emit a nice, pretty orange color. And so another reason why these are super important is now part of our study is their quantum dots are used in solar conversion, LED display, so your phone's lighting, and also biolabeling. So tagging different proteins or different drugs to go throughout the body and then figuring out where they can go. So I'm going to talk about my main research question. And the first thing I want to talk about is what is toxicology? That's the science that's concerned with the effects of nature and the detection of poison in the environment. So quantum dot toxicity in the environment is beginning to become a problem since quantum dots have been starting to be synthesized more recently. And it's because the nanomaterials are entering the environment through waste treatment. And a lot of these cores of the nanocrystals are heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, selenium, and those can affect different parts of your body in ways and also kill marine life, because what happens is the nanocrystal cores, they're going to embed into the soil underneath the river, and then the shell will degrade, and that's going to release this deadly chemical into, or this toxic chemical into the water stream, which in turn kills fish. And then if it's in fresh water, it can contaminate our water supplies. So also a lot of heavy metals are dangerous and they're also very expensive to get. For example, cadmium is one of the most researched and most utilized nanocrystal core. So with all that information, my research question is the characterization of the nanocrystal copper indium sulfide 2, which is also known as CIS, which I will be referring to it now, toxicity using Danio Rio, which are zebrafish. So some of the techniques that I'm able to use in my lab is I synthesize my own nanocrystals. I use UV spec to fluctuate with their absorbance and get to the specific concentration I need them to be at. I perform ligand exchange. I use size exclusion chromatography, and I also breed my own fish. So I'm going to go a little bit into each of these subsections of what I do. So for synthesis, how I create my nanocrystals very briefly is I use copper 1, indium 3, acetylacetonate, and then 1-dodecanyl, and I expose these nanocrystals that are in solution to a vacuum period and then also to a nitrogen gas period in order to create that beautiful red color you see down there. It initially starts off as like a really gross kind of highlighter yellow, and then after a while, once you heat it, it becomes that pretty red. So then I will clean my nanocrystals because I want to pull everything out of solution that I can. And since nanocrystals are going to be denser than the organic solvent they're in, then once I put them in the centrifuge and it spins for a while, they'll pull out. And then you can see in the bottom right, that picture is the black part of that solution. Those are the CIS nanocrystals that I'll be working with. Yes, right there. And then for what I do then is I dry the pellet out. I suspend it in a little bit of chloroform and then I dry it with N2 gas. And then I continue adding chloroform until I get to a specific absorption, which I will then know the concentration of my nanocrystals. So after I fix the absorption of my nanocrystals and I get to the concentration I need it to be at, I perform a ligand exchange. And so as I talked about in the very beginning, how you have your core, then your shell, then your ligands, the ligand exchange, what's going to happen is right now they're soluble in the organic phase, but they're not soluble in aqueous phase, which isn't going to work because if I'm going to test on the zebrafish, I need it to be soluble in the aqueous phase so it can mimic the environment that the embryos are in. So what I do is I exchange the ligands for an aqueous ligand, and this is a process that's pretty complicated. It takes about 24 hours to do, and it just exchanges the ligands. And then as you can see on the picture that's in the middle of the two, that top part, the kind of orange, that is my CIS solution that has now aqueous ligands on it. So after that, I do size exclusion chromatography, which is just a specific type of chromatography that elutes all the larger particles first and then traps all my organic solvents in the column. And then after that, I start breeding my fish. And once I breed my fish, I collect the embryos. And then I characterize the zebrafish by exposing them to different concentrations of my CIS solution. And I measure their rate of death over 4 days. So here are my main results and future steps. We have figured out that CIS nanocrystals produce a tunable band gap that fluoresces orange, as you saw in the previous photos. And I've been working on this experiment for about 2.5 years, really honing in on the materials and methods. I'm the second person to do this experiment. It's very new. And I'm honing in on the materials and methods, getting them refined. So now I can focus specifically on getting enough data collection to be publishable. So why is my research important? Well, we've been seeing in the news for the past few years that our environment is literally collapsing before our eyes because of carbon emissions, because of a bunch of different things that's affecting our atmosphere. So a lot of something that adds to them is toxic waste and also toxic nanomaterials, which I talked about beforehand. So this is why toxicology is an extremely important field going forward. And my CIS nanocrystals, I'm trying to figure out whether or not these will be less toxic than the other things that they have published studies on the toxicity of cadmium and selenium nanocrystals. And so by them being less toxic, if I'm able to characterize that, they will be more environmentally conscious. Also, copper is cheaper to get than cadmium is. So there will be a cheaper and more environmentally conscious alternative. Last slide, please. Okay, so really quickly, what are the best parts of some of my Roanoke College research experience? As Dr. Lassiter was saying earlier, at larger universities, there's a less opportunity for you to have undergraduate research. So if I was going to someplace else, I would not be getting this hands-on experience and being able to work with zebrafish and UV vis and everything all the techniques I am able to learn. So those are some skills that I've learned that I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn elsewhere. And also my mentor, Dr. Stephen Hughes, he has throughout the 2.5 years working on his research team, he's really pushed me and held me to high standards that I didn't think I could reach, but he knew I could, even if I didn't believe in myself then. He would be like, you can figure it out. Like, I understand you can. And then I'd come back to him like an hour later and I'd be like, I got it. And also the entire department, especially chemistry and biology, they're very caring and they focus not only on you and your scientific development, but also your character development and you as a whole person. So me, since I'm also involved in theater, that's very different from chemistry and science, but I actually got a lead in one of the environmentally conscious plays we did last year. And so many of my professors, like the entire chemistry department came, Dr. Lassiter came, a bunch of other biology professors as well. And that was really touching that they came to see me in one of my lead roles and didn't just wait until they saw me and ask about it in the lab. So thank you for listening.
Thank you. And there's Tessa's email address. If you have questions, if she's not able to stick around to the very end, I know she has to run off in a little bit. All right, next up, we've got Lauren Powell.
All right, my name is Lauren. I'm a senior and psychology major. So my research is like significantly less complex than Tessa's is, but I think it's like equally as interesting. I've done a couple of projects at Roanoke. Pretty much all of them at least have focused on empathy because that's what Dr. Buchholz, who I work with, is like interested in. But I decided, you know, with the political climate that there is right now to kind of spin it politically. So the research that I've most recently done and finished was this project called Are Liberals More Empathetic Than Conservatives? So the reason that this really even matters is, you know, as I'm sure all of you are aware, political partisanship is quite a problem. And understanding, like doing any kind of research that you can like help understand why it's happening is really helpful. Another thing that people often talk about when they're like talking about politics and like problems in politics is that there's not enough empathy. So research on the topic isn't like, it's important, you know. It's not necessarily new, but liberals are often said to be more empathetic and caring than compared to like conservatives. And knowing that we're all the same, but empathetic cues that motivate us are different could be helpful by helping politicians appeal to both liberals and conservatives rather than, you know, having somebody super far left and super far right trying to become president and just splitting the entire country like it is kind of right now. So what we were hypothesizing is that both parties are empathetic. Like we're not saying that one is not and one is, but we think that they're equally empathetic and that they kind of distribute it differently. So like they have different opinions on who is like deserving of help and of empathy. So for our research, we looked at like specifically in-group manipulations and out-group manipulations and political affiliation and how they both affected empathetic responding. So like an in-group manipulation would be like, for our study, we did like people in this country and like American names and stuff like that. And then out-group would be like people from other countries to see if there was a difference in empathy towards those people, like versus in-group versus out-group. So for our methods, we had a sample size of about 300 people, ranging in age from 18 to 73. We recruited all of these people on Prolific, which is just, it's a nice website where you can, you know, set up a research survey and it kind of, you like set up conditions and like Prolific will just like send it to people and they can like decide whether or not they want to do it. The individuals were like roughly 50-50 women, men and women, which was good. But so again, for the methods, we use several different scales in order to measure the empathy. We use the IRI, the basic empathy scale and the compassionate love for humanity scale, which are all really good scales for empathy. And we also tested reliability with political affiliation to make sure that they were even useful to us, which they all were. So the way that we did this was, before completing the empathy scales, participants were asked to read like a fake news article that we wrote describing a patient that died in surgery. The story involved a doctor who was facing a civil lawsuit from the patient's family for complications and medical malpractice claims following the death of the patient. There were two forms of this story. They were literally identical other than the name of the patient in the story. So we had the in-group patient with the American name and an out-group patient with a Middle Eastern name. And after reading the story, the participants were asked a series of questions about how they felt about money awarded, as well as like several different questions to assess empathy for the family and the doctor, as well as attitudes for punishment for the doctor. So we found that several different measures of empathy were significantly correlated at alpha equaling 0.05 with political affiliation, which indicates that liberals tend to score higher than conservatives on a variety of empathy scales, but that does not mean that they are more empathetic. So participants indicated that more money should be given to family of in-group victims, so like American families or patients, with $16 million, like roughly $16 million as the mean, than families of out-group patients, where they were awarded $14 million, but that was not significant. Conservative participants donated slightly more millions of dollars than liberals did. It also wasn't significant, but we kind of thought about this, like why would, because you wouldn't really expect that. You'd expect liberals to be giving more money, but that could be blamed on a variety of things, such as like conservatives usually being more wealthier than liberals, so they have more money to give in the first place. But that's just the thought. Women also gave more money than men did, which was expected, but that also was not significant. So women, this was interesting. Women gave the same amount of money regardless of whether the patient was an in-group or out-group member, while men gave less. So maybe women are more empathetic than men. But the gender differences were only significant within the out-group condition. Conservative women gave more money than conservative men did, which again is kind of expected, like women typically are more empathetic, I would say. But these were only gender differences, like I said, were only different within conservatives. So what does this mean? Basically is that our research suggests that liberals and conservatives are equally as empathetic as each other, but their empathy is spread differently between in-groups and out-groups. And it's important because we can use this research, and politicians and other psychologists and whatever can use this research along with previous research to determine how to best appeal to both sides of the political spectrum, like I said before. So rather than having two parties that are butting heads all the time, someone could use this research usefully and come up with policies and ways to appeal people, like people of both sides. So I have some graphs here. The left graph, it's kind of hard to see, but the left graph shows that women gave roughly the same amount of money regardless of in-group or out-group, while men gave significantly less money to the patient out-group. The red line on the left is women, and the blue line, the blue line is men. And then the graph on the right shows that conservative women gave more money than liberal women, but I don't believe that any of these were significant. So why should you do research at Roanoke? Research in any field, like Dr. Lassiter was saying, is really important. It's really available here. Like if you want to do research with any professor, even if they're not doing research, just ask them. And I'm sure that they'll either say, yes, we can do something, or they'll like point you in a direction that you would want to go. Doing research also, like he said, helps you build your CV and your resume. So if you're planning on going to grad school, especially for psychology, you want to have some kind of research. A lot of schools like that, like mostly if you're applying to like a PhD program out of Roanoke, but either way, it's really important to have. again, with grad school, it makes you stand out a lot. So I've got 4 years now of research fellows, and I know that that's going to help me a lot when I start applying to grad schools and PhD programs. Like other people have said, you build really close relationships with staff and faculty members. So Dr. Buckles, who I work with, is like my dad. Like, I love him. He's amazing. He's done so much and he's just the best. And then lastly, like you get to go to really cool places. I've been to 2 conferences so far, and I've been to Atlanta, which I had never been to before my freshman year. And then this past year, right before coronavirus happened, actually, it was like a week before the country shut down. I was in New Orleans and presented there. And both of those were really fun and really cool. So yeah, so like doing research, you absolutely have the opportunity to go to a conference your freshman year, which is not something that a lot of people can do. My last conference that I was at in New Orleans, I had a student, I think he was like second year master's student. He came up to me and like asked me if I was an undergrad student, like how many conferences I'd been to. And I was like, oh, this is like my second one. And he was like, I'm a second year master's student and this is my first conference. And I was like, yeah. So I definitely recommend going into research and go to conferences. Like they're so fun and you meet so many cool people because you're literally just in a room, like a huge room of people who love the same stuff that you do. And it's awesome. So that's all I've got. But right now we're looking into, so we finished up this project, we've presented it. I don't think we're going to publish it, but right now we're looking into research on fear appeals in politics and specifically like the use of fear appeals with the Trump administration. So I've started doing a little bit of like literature on that, or like reading literature on that. So that'll be interesting.
All right. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Yep.
And there's Lauren's email address as well as Dr. Buckholz's email address.
Yeah, and that's a picture of the both of us presenting at the conference in New Orleans.
Excellent. And Steph Zimba is going to talk to us about her project in the sociology department.
My name is Steph, and I'm a senior sociology major. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my research project, which is called Social Isolation Among Older Immigrants, which I've been doing with Dr. Morocco. So first, a little bit of background on my general topic. Social isolation and loneliness can occur when a person has very few social contacts or if they're dissatisfied with the relationships that they do have. Social isolation is really common among older adults, and it's an important public health issue because it raises risk for many negative health impacts, like an increased risk for disease and depression. Older immigrants have an even higher risk of experiencing isolation and loneliness compared to older adults in general. This is for several reasons, including lower English proficiency, lack of family nearby, and dependence on family to communicate. And all of this can act as a barrier to make friends and expand their social networks. So older immigrants are a very large and diverse population, as you might imagine. But in general, they can be split into 2 main groups based on how long they've lived in the US. And this is an important distinction for my project, as I've included both in my sample, and they have different experiences and challenges. So the first is early life immigrants, and they came to the US as children, young adults, or adults and grew old here. And the second group would be late life immigrants, but they're coming to the US already as older adults. So my project sought to investigate whether and how social isolation and loneliness are experienced by older immigrants living in Southwest Virginia. And I was also interested in the types of strategies that elders would use to reduce loneliness and maintain relationships. My study was approved by the Institutional Review Board, which evaluates all the research at Roanoke College that involves human subjects for ethical reasons. I recruited participants using various different methods, including hanging up flyers, reaching out to community leaders, and just going out in the community and hanging up posters at ethnic grocery stores or restaurants, coffee shops, that kind of thing. I interviewed over 40 immigrant elders from a variety of countries, ages, and with different backgrounds. And on average, interviews took about 1 to 2 hours. First, I'm going to kind of distinguish between social isolation and loneliness. So most participants in my study didn't actually identify social isolation, which means like lacking relationships, as a major concern for them. They didn't see it as having a major negative impact on their life because they did have family and friends rely on and interact with. They had a social network, essentially. However, many participants did admit to feeling lonely, at least from time to time. So I have a few quotes here just to give you some examples of the kind of things that people would say to me. And a lot of participants gave as reasons for being lonely, missing family, being homesick, or having trouble making friends or adjusting to life in the US. I noticed that there are three main strategies that immigrant elders would use to cope with loneliness, which were family and friend relationships, participation in religious communities, and cultural continuity. So the first theme I'm going to discuss is family and friend relationships. As you might imagine, having close relationships with family is really crucial for decreasing loneliness, and most participants stayed in touch with siblings and close relatives in both the US and in their home countries. Their most important relationship was often with adult children, if they had any. Friends were also important, and many participants did activities with their friends regularly, or would get together with them, or just call them up to talk, as you can see from one of the quotes there. One pattern that I did notice was that late life arrivals described having stronger relationships with family and having fewer friends in general, while immigrants who came earlier in their life had a larger friendship network in addition to having those family ties. Staying in touch also became a lot easier due to technological advances such as cell phones and social media. A lot of the early life immigrants in my sample they would discuss this, saying that it was really hard for them at first to kind of maintain their relationships with their family in the US, and as well as those who are living abroad. It costs them money, or it's just harder. And so the technological advances have helped to decrease loneliness quite a bit. So the second thing I'm going to discuss is involvement in religious communities. And as you might imagine, this is one avenue that older immigrants can take to decrease their loneliness, because it provides them with access to a social network and assistance if they need it. I've included a few examples here of participants discussing how they've made friends through their place of worship, or how they've learned to lean on their faith in order to deal with any negative feelings. And for some participants too, just regularly attending service provided a way for them to kind of have social interactions and feel as though that they're contributing to a community. Ethnic places of worship were particularly important for some immigrant elders, as this offered them an ability to have many of the benefits of a religious community, which I just described, as well as to continue cultural practices like holidays or food and that kind of thing. So finally, continuing cultural practices was another way that immigrant elders were able to decrease loneliness. And participants did this by joining ethnic clubs or organizations, celebrating the traditions or holidays, and preparing and sharing food from their home countries. So familiar cultural practices were important because this provides elders with a sense of satisfaction, as well as a way to connect with fellow immigrants and even pass on their culture to their family members, especially their grandchildren. So overall, a lot more research needs to be done in order to explore the experiences and challenges of older immigrants who are living in the United States. Loneliness and isolation are becoming more pressing issues for several different reasons, especially among the older immigrant population, who are already at a greater risk for experiencing these negative outcomes. So the older immigrant population is growing significantly in size and diversity. According to the US Census Bureau, it's expected to quadruple in size by 2060, and more immigrants are coming from Asia and Latin America, which means that often they may not be as proficient in English, and there's significant cultural differences between those countries and the US. And late life immigration is also expected to increase due to family reunification policies. So all of the immigrants who had come earlier in their lives can also apply to bring their elderly parents here. And there's a few things that future research should consider, including how refugee and immigrant status impacts experiences, as well as race and ethnicity. And finally, how aging and health of this population present additional concerns. So some next steps I have would be to analyze my interview data and to write articles based on the themes and the major findings I have. So I'm going to conclude by describing my experiences with research at Roanoke College. I'm a member of the Research Fellows Program, and I was able to become a research assistant on a project on interfaith dating during my first year. We were analyzing focus group data, and I continued to work with the two professors that I was working with in the sociology department, and we recently had a paper accepted to be published early in 2021. I've also become another assistant on another project on non-drinking students. And last summer, I was awarded a spot in the Summer Scholars Research Program. So Summer Scholars gave me the opportunity to create my own project, which was on older immigrants. And I've presented some of the broad findings from the study to you today. I've also had the opportunity to present my research at several different conferences, both undergraduate and discipline specific. And this is really important because one of the main things about doing research is trying to share your findings with other people, whether that's through articles or through presentations. And overall, I've really enjoyed the experience. I've learned a lot. I think it's going to be very valuable for developing future projects. My mentors have been really great. They've kind of pushed me to do things that I would never thought I would do. Like I never thought I was going to be developing my own project and going out in the community. It's helped me be very confident and that kind of thing. And so if you have any questions, my email address is at the bottom of the slide. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Steph. So that's a bit about undergrad research and some example projects. And that's what we had prepared. So I guess if there's time for a couple of questions, we can take them.
Chris, I saw one question come in that asked about pursuing a topic. What does that process look like for, a student who's interested in doing research? How do they identify that topic?
Yeah, how do you figure out what you're going to do? It can really go two main ways. Sometimes a student has a topic in mind. And if that's the case, then they can come to me and I can point them to professors that have similar interests. And then they can talk with that professor about developing that project. That's relatively rare. A lot of times students have a general area they're interested in and not a specific project. And in that case, I also try to talk with the students, see what their interests are, and guide them to talk with 2, 3, 4 different professors and see what projects do those professors have going on that a student could plug into just to begin to learn the techniques of the field. And often that's what freshmen and sophomores will join a research program doing, is just learning the techniques of the field and start to learn how to develop the skills and the knowledge to then begin asking good questions for research. So some students come in, project already identified. Most come in with just a vague area, and we try to find them a home where they can start learning those skills and techniques to then develop a good question.
All right, I think that was the only questions that we had at this time. If I get any more through email, I'll be sure to pass them on. But
okay.
I again want to thank our students again for being able to participate. I certainly learned some things today, and I think time and time again, our students continue to impress me and what they're able to accomplish. So kudos to you both, and thank you, Dr. Lassiter, for helping organize this and finding these students and sharing their topics with us. And at this point, I'll wrap it up. Again, my name is Greg Hamlin. I'm in our Office of Alumni and Family Relations. I hope folks enjoyed our first ever virtual family resource series. If there's any other topics that you think of that we could bring to you, please feel free to reach out to our office. You can just reach out at alumni@roanoke.edu, and that'll find its way to us. But again, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you on campus soon.
Thanks, everybody.